Hey, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. I have another book review for you that I read, and I really like it. And it's actually the same author that I've done before a couple of times that I find really interesting in his writing. Remember, I'm hoping that you're getting a lot of value out of this. Education does not stop at school, it has to be independently learned as well. And that's something that you have to find for yourself. And I'm hoping that you will, and that you're always learning and uh, shooting towards what you want to do and not always what, you know, everything has challenges, but you can't let those challenges get you down. The challenges are just for you to overcome so you can do a lot better. But today we have what we call the 30 Days to Self Discipline by Peter Hollins. If you don't know anything about Peter, again, I think he majored in psychology and he's much like a person of value learning. He writes his books that have a lot of good stuff into them that I like to share with you. That's why I like to do this every so often because I want to make sure that a message gets out there because a lot of people don't have a lot of time for reading. Maybe they don't like reading, they can't focus on reading. And so I like to share this with you, and I'm hoping this will open up a lot of good stuff there. But the book talks about most like a self-discipline, and if you saw my video about self-discipline before, is that you gotta fight for self-discipline, and you're not always taught self-discipline. We're not inherited with it. We gotta pick it up somewhere, and it takes time, but it also takes a lot of concentration. And so we want to be top performers in anything we do. We want to make sure that we pursue things that we want, and we want to lessen difficulty as much as we possibly can. And so, as people, as human beings, we get lazy. Laziness, I think it's something that we learn along the way. Everybody has a little bit of laziness, but sometimes we can overdo laziness. And what he says in the book, he says that lazy is a harsh value of large value of judgmental, and worse than that, it's a fundamentally misunderstood as a particular pattern of behavior. And so laziness is a behavioral issue. And it's okay to have a certain amount of laziness. I mean, we all do that when you get home from work, hard day of kids. Maybe you did something in the yard. You just want to kind of lay back for a couple hours and be lazy and get your mind out of something else. That's great, but you also need to understand that you can have too much laziness, and that's kind of maybe what the effect is, what he's talking about. But it's really just when you call somebody a lazy person, it's not really nice to do that. One, because it's a name calling, but it's not who they are, and it's just a behavioral misunderstanding. Laziness is not always mean, but it's not always good as people view it. It's your barriers of action. If you have a lazy mindset that you don't want to really do anything because everything just seems so hard, you kind of have a fixed mindset that's not going to get easier. You think negatively, and sometimes that you have low confidence. I meet these people sometimes, and they just, I don't know. I think they can do a whole lot, but they just always want to do something that they just don't want to do, and it pretty much creates like a barrier in their mind thinking. And I think that they will figure it out later, but we all go through this called procrastination. This word procrastinate. I mean, what does procrastinate do? Procrastinate means just to put off when something is due. And it's maybe it's afraid of lack of interest. Maybe you don't have support systems to make that something that happens. So you procrastinate, you put it under the rug, and maybe you leave it for I don't know how long, and then you want to come to deal with it, and then the time deadline comes, and then you have to deal with it, and then that's where procrastination gets you. For example, if you're a student, maybe in a college or something like that, and your college professor says you got to book an essay that's 10 pages that's due in a month. Well, then you kind of put off your thinking, and then about 3 weeks later, it's like, oh, I got to get started my report, my 10-page report. And so that stress becomes apparent. And a lot of it's just maybe you don't have the energy for it or you don't have the time for it. And I think that you need to make time. Time is a difficult thing to kind of think about because time is always here, but we just don't think of time as a necessity because we think that we have all the time in the world sometimes, and we don't until the deadline hits. But it kind of creates that laziness mindset. You put that procrastination off so much, and then you have the stress that comes with it. And so, uncertainty, he talks about in the book, uncertainty, can cause a lot of anxiety. And sometimes when we want to do something and we procrastinate doing it, it really makes us more, antsy because maybe we don't know how to start that. We don't have the support system. We don't have the resources. And it just takes a lot of dedication to get yourself going and a mindset move. The ego in us, and the ego tells it's what our mind, what we feel about ourselves and feel about everybody else. That's kind of what determines your success. It's like, hey, my ego in my head is saying, okay, I need to do this. And you're kind of balancing out these requirements in life. But why do people procrastinate? Well, I think it's because maybe things are too complicated. Everything becomes overwhelming. Maybe we're too overwhelmed with an idea, procrastination, of um, this job, and it just requires too much of our attention. And sometimes that affects a lot of us, and so we put it off until the very last minute. Maybe I don't know, like cleaning the house, cleaning the bathroom, taking care of your finances. Um, a lot of that stuff's really worried, and it requires a lot of concentration, a lot of laser focus to do it. And we just procrastinate because we want to not do it because we're overwhelmed at the time, and we just don't want to have a challenge. And so that's where he kind of comes up with the 30 days of to self discipline. And you have to start small, and you got to start at level 1, level 2, level 3, and every so often you got to feedback to the next level and say, okay, well, the bottom level I did this to get to this level. Now to get to the next level, this is what I have to do. And he talks about, why do you have to do this? And, maybe the tools and the strategies to move on. And, how to kind of work over those barriers. And maybe creating a to-do list. To-do list, people don't like to-do lists. One, because you got to make the to-do list. And two, you got to make sure you check off the to-do list. But I think a to-do list actually helps you with your dopamine effect. I mean, we have a chemical neurotransmitter called dopamine, our feel-good drug in our brain, that when we kind of start checking things off on a to-do list, that helps us reward. And that's where our to-do list might help a lot, is that you go through the week and you make Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you make these to-do lists like in a phone or a program or even a piece of paper. And you have these to-do lists and you're checking them off all the time. You're actually increasing your reward center. It's like, hey, this is great. I'm doing this. And this is why a to-do list can actually be very valuable. Sometimes people make arrangements like a flow chart. Maybe they make like a cluster chart. They put the center idea here, and they kind of go here, they kind of go there, they kind of go there, and they kind of get their day going with a cluster, with a flow chart. And sometimes that's always good to kind of value your thoughts and kind of make like a brainstorm kind of a fashion. But you also want to find balance too. And you also want to make sure you have small rewards for yourself. So maybe for the last couple of days, I have been doing the gym. My reward is I'm going to go watch that new movie. Or maybe I'm going to take my spouse out or something like that to a nice, not a fancy dinner, but some kind of good dinner. Or you're going to have fun with the kids or something like that. And you kind of want to make those small increments after you do those things every day. And so what you're doing, you're retraining yourself to kind of have this this mindset. Really, you're trying to rewire your brain to say, hey, do this, do that, and then I'm going to be doing this. And you're climbing this little, this little pyramid, I guess, of 30 days. You're retraining your brain, and so you can kind of lower the procrastination. And so you got to have a schedule too. And I think a schedule works for everybody. And sometimes we don't make a schedule because maybe you don't know how to. It really helps the brain kind of associate things that you want to get done too, and it's really rewarding. And so you kind of want to grow, learn, and then you want to thrive in what you do every single day, because that's what gives you the value of yourself and your interest to what you want to do and accomplish throughout your week, month, and year. A lot of multitasking that he talks about in the book. Multitasking is good sometimes, but if you do too many things, one, you're going to lower your willpower. You only have so much energy during the day, and if you have like 4 or 5 things going at once, just say, you kind of have anxiety as you go, because what happens then if you don't do all 4 things? And so maybe you got 2 things done, and then you say, well, I had doing 4 things at once, and I have done 2, and I still have these other 2 things. Well, you're going to have anxiety because you didn't get them done. And maybe you're telling yourself, oh my. And sometimes multitasking doesn't always work. And it's just about the reward that you're getting throughout the day, throughout the year, throughout the week. And so it's all about the mindset into yourself. And so, you kind of judge yourself on a scale. So for example, 1 to 5. And you want to kind of gauge yourself out of these 3 principles. I mean, it's the seriousness of it, it's the urgency it has to get done, and it's also the growth that you want to see into it. So it's called seriousness, urgency, and growth. And so what this means is that you're trying to you're trying to get a project completed, right? And so you're kind of saying, okay, what's the seriousness of this? How important is this to get this done now? Or maybe the next one's called urgency. How soon do I need to get this done? And you're always thinking about this. How soon I want to get this done? Well, I want to get a new roof on my house because I know the winter is going to be terrible next month. Or maybe the grass is becoming so bad and fire season's coming up and it's getting brown. How serious is that? How urgency that you have to get done? But look at the quality that you're going to get out of it. Look at the growth. Look at the reward that you're going to get out. Go from there. And so you're kind of basing these on this metrics of 1 to 5. And you kind of want to take all this to how serious, urgency, and the growth of it. And that's really important. And you also kind of want to form this habit at the same time, that you're kind of brainstorming these new ideas and how you are structuring yourself to deal with them, and to kind of adjust your psychology along the way. That state of growth, that comfort zone into stuff. You're growing and you're achieving things. You're risking your reward. And you're always making this, and you're making your prefrontal cortex a lot more solid. And that's what's really important about your brain, is that as you're rewiring your brain in these 30 days, you're making yourself more active. And also you're lowering that procrastination. And you're going to meet people that don't want to do this. They're going to say, well, who cares? I don't really care. I mean, I get things done when I want to get things done. You only have so much time on this world, true, and you always have so much willpower, and you are getting older all the time too, and things change throughout the world, and you have to adapt to that. And so you always have to kind of be aware and how you feel that you are accountable to things, and you kind of have to have this positive talk and see how you see the world through yourself and how you respond to any kind of job or seriousness is. And it's really just about that metrics of seriousness, urgency, and growth into what you're doing, and kind of creating like a flow chart or some kind of sequencing event to kind of make yourself getting to where you want to be. And so I really think that this book is worth getting. I love this author. He has probably like 6 or 7 books out, and I have like 3 or 4 of them that I have been reading and reviewing. But yeah, it's not that bad of a book. It's not the length of the book. It's a fairly recently, like 2018. But a lot of good stuff in here, and I don't know where I bought this from. It's probably on Amazon. But anyway, so hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you again. Thank you.